Carey Price is a part of the 1.5% of all NHL players with 400 plus games who spent their entire career with one team. We all know that team was the Montreal Canadiens. That may very well be the reason that Price never came close to a Stanley Cup until he was on his last legs. See, the Canadiens of the 2010s were not a great team when you take Carey Price out of the picture, but his play alone convinced their GM that they could compete, despite numerous holes in their team. Let's go back in time though, to Price's draft year in 2005. Price was coming off a .920 save percentage that year with the WHL's Tri-City Americans, and he was poised to go high in that year's draft. And the Canadiens took him 5th overall, which was a great selection seeing the names of guys who went before and after him. Although as the years went on, their drafting started getting a lot worse. More on that later in the video though. It did take him 2 years to finally get his first chance on the big club, but Price joined the Canadiens in 2007, and he came out of the gate flying. He posted a .920 save percentage in his rookie season, along with a 2.56 goals against average. Due to his play, he came 4th in Calder voting and 9th in Vezina voting. He was still able to play at a decent rate the next season, but once the new decade hit and the world was in the 2010s, Price took his game to another level. Over an 8-year stretch from 2009-10 to 2016-17, Price only recorded a save percentage lower than .912 once, and 5 of those seasons were over a .920. He was a force to be reckoned with during that time, and a goalie of his caliber is a once-in-a-generation find for an NHL team. So surely the Canadiens had to have realized the talent in goal and surrounded him with talent necessary to win, right? Well, they didn't do terribly, but for the level of goaltending they had during that stretch, you'd hope for a lot more. They made the playoffs all but 2 years, and made it to the conference finals twice. I want to focus on those conference finals appearances in particular. Now, I'll talk about the first conference final they made it to in 2010. This one didn't involve Price too much. He played in only 4 games during that playoffs, but Montreal had another goalie up their sleeve in Yaroslav Halak, who played to a .923 during that run, and had a massive impact on their playoffs, until they were overpowered by the Flyers in the conference final. That series against the Flyers was a microcosm of their biggest issues through the 2010s. They got shut out 3 times in that series. Lack of consistent goal scoring plagued the Canadiens all through the 2010s, as they ranked 19th in goals per game during that stretch. And that other time they made it to the conference finals, in 2013-14, they had 1 guy above 60 points, the highest being Max Pacioretty, and only 3 players reached 50. That's right, a team who made it all the way to the conference finals only had 3 players reach 50 points, and none of them even reached 70 points. For reference, the current 23-24 Canadiens have a top 4 that is on pace to outscore the 2013-14 top 4, with Suzuki on pace for 77, Caulfield on pace for 64, Matheson on pace for 60, and Monahan on pace for 59. The difference is the current team is in 26th place and not even gonna sniff the conference finals like the 13-14 team did. How could this be? Well, the Canadiens didn't have a great forward core in the 2010s, as referenced earlier by their incredibly low spot on the league's 2010s goals per game leaderboard mentioned earlier in the video. Which, just to remind you, they were 19th out of 30 teams in goals per game in the 2010s. And yet, despite that, they were still able to make it to the playoffs most years, completely off the back of Carey Price. If you don't believe me on that, I'll prove it right now. Here's a Carey Price's save percentage graphed by season. Some pretty nice seasons in there, very high save percentages. And now here's the Canadiens' point totals, graphed by season. Notice how the graphs share the same dips, spikes, and general patterns. This is because during that stretch, literally, and I mean literally, they lived and died by Carey Price. Just a note, Price was out most of the 2015-16 season, which makes sense because he posted a .934, but only in 12 games, and the Canadiens finished pretty low with only 82 points that year. They had no star forwards during this stretch, and their highest single-season point getter was only 70 by Thomas Plekanec in the 2009-10 season. Now I have pulled up a bucket load of stats on how bad the forward group was for the 2010s Canadiens, and I think now I should say why it was so bad. There's this little thing called the NHL draft that happens every year. You know, where teams get to choose the future of their franchise and make decisions that will alter the entire team's outlook. The Canadiens did good drafting in 2007, 2 years after drafting Price. That year saw them draft Ryan McDonagh, PK Subban, and Max Pacioretty. McDonagh, though, got traded for scraps before he even stepped on the ice for the Canadiens. After that year, though, let's see how they did, and for each year I'll give them a pass or fail, depending on their choices. In 2008, nobody they drafted even made it to the NHL anywhere. Obvious fail. 2009, they took Louis LeBlanc in the first round, and I mean, just look at the number of games played and points from the players who went after him. A terrible choice and another fail. In the 2010 draft, they took Jared Tenorti, who could never stay on the NHL roster until he left Montreal, and passed on guys like Kuznetsov, Charlie Coyle, and Brock Nelson. They did land Brendan Gallagher in the 5th round that year, though, so they get a pass. In 2011, they selected Nathan Beaulieu in the 1st round, who only played a few decent seasons with the team before being moved for a 3rd round pick. Another pretty clear fail, especially when you look at a few of the names who went after him. 2012, they took Alex Galchenyuk 3rd overall, and while if you compare their choice to the first 2 selections, it looks good, but they still passed on better NHL talent in Philip Forsberg, Andrei Vasilevsky, and Morgan Rielly. I'll be generous and still give them a pass though, because Galchenyuk did have a few good seasons with them. In 2013, they drafted Michael McCarron in the 1st round, and passed on Shea Theodore, JT Compher, and Ryan Hartman, who were all clearly better choices. They did have a late round steal in Arturi Lehkonen though, which pushes this year up to a pass. The last year I'll cover in this segment is 2014, where they again struck out in the 1st round and selected Nikita Sherbak, who played a whopping 37 NHL games, and they passed on guys like Ivan Barbashev, Alex Nedeljkovic, and Thatcher Demko. They got Jake Evans in the 7th round that year, but Jake Evans isn't enough to save a draft, so they get another fail. In the 7 years where they could get important pieces to surround Price with sufficient talent to compete for cups, they failed, at least in my eyes, 4 out of those 7 years, to even have a decent draft. You can chalk up 1 or 2 bad drafting years to bad luck, but to mess up over half of your crucial drafting years will sink almost any team. Any team that doesn't have Carey Price. This level of ineptness from the Canadiens front office put Price in a terrible situation where the team was solely reliant on him, and any slip-up from him could ruin their season. This is how it was for Price until 2021, and boy, things got interesting in 2021. They finally built that forward core that honestly wasn't much better than the 2010s. They drafted Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Cole Caulfield, absolutely fleeced the Golden Knights for Nick Suzuki, and traded for Shea Weber. Going into the season, it didn't seem like they'd do much, but we all know they went on an incredible run where Carey Price again stood on his head and posted a .924 in the playoffs, elevating from a .901 in the regular season. But something magical happened. The Canadiens scored clutch goals. As I said earlier, in 2013-14, the Canadiens got shut out 3 times in the conference finals. And when that happens, you can have anyone in net, but you'll still lose the series. But the 2021 Canadiens got shut out only twice in their entire run. And 9 of the 13 playoff wins was by only 1 goal. It goes without saying, a team needs to be clutch to win 1-goal games. I will say though that the 13-14 team did outscore the 2021 team by over 0.7 goals per game. But the 13-14 team were not clutch like the 21 team was. That run was very interesting, as it's the best run that Price ever won on in his career. It just begs the unanswerable question: what would have happened if Price had a better or more clutch forward group in front of him earlier in his career? We will never know though, and as we know how the story went, the Lightning beat the Habs and Price overworked himself through the 21 playoffs so hard and pushed a nagging injury to its brink and was forced to hang up the skates in 2022, only seeing 6 more career games after the 2021 playoffs. Although not officially retired as of yet, doctors have ruled out basically any chance of him playing again. Price saw his greatest opportunity to win a cup, and he put it all on the line, playing some of his best hockey, and even then, the Canadiens still couldn't put enough support around him to win it all. He will go down as one of the greatest goalies of the generation, and dare I say one of the greatest Canadian goalies of all time. His peak was special. I just wish we got to see him get the ultimate prize. That's it for today though, so thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and shoot a comment below on what you think of Price's legacy. For more videos from me, you can watch my last video on Alexander Ovechkin, or stay tuned for new videos every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. See you all later.